Green Team Academy podcast, episode 56, my interview with Vann Fussell of Compost Colorado and his innovative business approach, which is a mashup of compost collection and sustainable subscription box service. Hey, are you ready to make a positive impact for the planet? If so, then you're in the right place. My name is Joan Gregerson, and I am an eco-nut. Thanks for joining me today, and don't forget to head over to the greenteamacademy.com website to pick up plenty of other resources to help you on your way. And with that, let's get started. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for another episode of the Green Team Academy podcast. And I'm so excited to be hanging out today and to introduce you to Vann Fussell of Compost Colorado. You know, this is kind of an interesting thing that composting, it's one of the simplest mechanisms on the planet, right? I mean, you just have things and it rots and turns into this beautiful topsoil that grows things. But somehow, like so many other things, we've managed to really complicate that and break that cycle. And so there's all kinds of cool implications with what can happen when we start composting more. And there's all different kinds of businesses popping up and figuring out ways to help people. And so that is what Vann is doing. So with that, we're going to talk more all about that. But with that, I just want to say thank you so much, Vann, for joining us. And if you don't mind, just start by telling us, how the heck did you get into running your own compost business?
Well, thank you so much, Joan, for having me on the podcast. I'm very flattered for you to invite me on your show. I've listened to several episodes, so I just wanted to say thank you so much for what you do and for giving a voice to all the different aspects of environmental activists here in Colorado and beyond. It's really great. So I thank you for letting me get on the soapbox a little bit and talk about composting and why I think it's so great and important. So yeah, I started Compost Colorado last year, and we're a compost collection service. We collect commercially and residentially, and we're trying to spread the word about composting and why it's one of the most important things that everyone can do to become a little bit more green and make a good environmental impact. So. Yeah.
Okay, so what were you doing before? I mean, what led you up to this point? Like what triggered you of like, you know what, dang it, I'm going to start this company?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I definitely did not see this coming at all. This was not on my radar by any means. I suppose that a lot of the inspiration for composting and for environmentalism manifested itself in college. I studied agroecology as my minor. So it's sustainable agriculture and the study of just how to incorporate sustainability into a lot of different aspects of our lives. And so, yeah, I've kind of always had an interest in environmentalism. And when I moved to Colorado just under 2 years ago, I was really surprised. I moved from North Carolina, and I was really surprised that composting wasn't as popular here. Because composting to me is like chapter 1 of environmentalism. I mean, there's so many more steps you can take after that, and they're really great, but composting to me is like the lowest rung on the ladder to begin with. It's low-hanging fruit, and it makes a really big impact. And I was really surprised and astonished about that. So I started digging, and later on I just decided I should start a company that would sort of be a catalyst for this movement. So, yeah.
I feel like you have a lot of puns going in there because you're talking about low-hanging fruit and then digging, and I like it. I'm not sure if that was intended, but that's pretty good. So what would you say? I don't know. Actually, I think it's probably worth describing the basic cycle that is composting and maybe contrasting that to what happens when we don't compost.
So I really like what you touched upon in your intro. That kind of relates back to this question about how composting really is just part of the natural life cycle. It's a very just basic part of ecology and nature. Things have a natural life cycle where they grow from the earth, the sun and water and oxygen, and they break down organically, and there's life that helps break those things down and regenerate into more life. And so composting really is a huge part, a huge beautiful part of that natural environmental life cycle. And we have complicated it with landfills and with a lot of waste practices that really don't make sense, kind of like a lot of aspects of our society. Really, we're fighting against ourselves here. Instead of taking these organic materials and taking them to a landfill where they don't break down and in fact turn into greenhouse gas emissions that are one of the major sources for global warming, we could actually just take that to a different site, process it minimally, and turn it into really healthy soil that we could use to solve other problems, such as soil degradation and other issues, and have people have access to healthy soil to feed their communities. So it really is something that is a lot more simple and is a lot more, composting is definitely something that could be made easier than it is right now.
All right. So that's probably a good segue. So that's where you came in, right? Where you're like, you know what, dang it. Why is this not a bigger deal in Colorado? Because, Colorado has this reputation of being kind of an environmentally conscious place, but we do see that our recycling numbers are low and composting as well. So yeah. What did you see as a business opportunity because Denver, if we're talking about Denver now, Denver does have curbside composting, so people can pay around $10 a month and get the green cart that is parked outside. But, I'm not actually one of those people that can get that because I live in an apartment, and those things go along with the city's pickup service. So there are a lot of us out there that don't get that. So what did you see as the business opportunity to fill in with? So what does Compost Colorado kind of focus on?
So the city does collect compost, like alongside their trash and recycling. And they launched that about a couple years ago, which in terms of other cities' composting and zero waste programs, it was a little bit behind the curve. But it's really great that they are finally implementing this, and it's a growing program. So it does take a little while to have your bin delivered if you live in a single family household. But even then, like you said, if you live in an apartment, if you live in a condo, if you're a business, the city will not collect from you. And so the majority of the waste is coming from, the majority of both waste and organic waste that can be composted is coming from sources that the city will not be able to pick up. Most people live in multi-family homes, apartment buildings, and businesses, of course, like coffee shops and restaurants, generate a ton of organic waste that the city cannot pick up. So it's not like the city offering a compost collection service will solve the issue. And so that's where we fit in great, is that we sort of pick up where the city leaves off and try to make composting as easy, affordable, and effective as possible for all different environments.
Okay, so I like what you're saying. You're saying that Compost Colorado basically picks up where the city leaves off. And man, the levels of puns are great in here where you're picking up. And so how does that work? Just give us an example, say for an apartment dweller. So usually that the apartment contracts with the company that picks up the trash and if they have recycling. But so then if an individual apartment dweller wants to make a change, if they can't convince the whole building to do it, what are their options? What would you recommend for somebody like that? How does that work?
There's a lot of hurdles for folks living in an apartment or condo to compost. So like you said, the building will often have a contract with a waste hauler to have a dumpster in the back. Almost all of them don't even have recycling, which is crazy. Like so many apartment buildings, it's not mandatory for apartment buildings to even have recycling. So that's why you're seeing really low diversion rates here in Denver and in Colorado. It's insane. But one of the reasons why they don't have recycling, and of course they don't have composting, is because it is a space issue. So these apartment buildings don't have adequate space to install in place a second, 3-yard dumpster. And so because of that space issue, they only have one dumpster, and that was how the city was kind of designed back, in this, the 20th century. And so they didn't have the recycling and composting on their minds when they were doing planning. But so what we do is that we provide a bucket for individual members to keep inside their own flat and fill up with all their food and organic waste. And then we collect that every week. And so why that is great is because we replace it with a clean bucket, and this keeps the smell and other nasty factors that come with composting completely mitigated. And the apartment managers and building managers don't have to worry about nasty smells or pests, being attracted to these rotting food smells, because they're in these sealed bins that we're collecting every week. And space isn't an issue because there are these small buckets. And so it's really a win-win-win for the tenant and for the apartment building and for us. So it's a great solution. We're finding a lot of buy-in from building managers now. So that's really great. You get a member in one building, and they're at first, the building managers are at first like a little bit adverse to this new program. They're like, well, what's this? Food waste is rotting in a bucket. They don't like it. And so, but then when it starts being implemented and they see that there's hardly any smell, tenants like it, and the building manager is accommodating to this new feature. It's a plus for folks to live in that building when the building managers are accommodating to the service. So it's a good selling point for the property managers. So once again, it's a great win all around.
If someone is looking at a new apartment or moving to somewhere and they're asking, hey, do you guys have recycling or composting? If they know about this, then they can say, well, we don't provide it as a whole, but there are some of our tenants do use this service, so you can get composting. So that's kind of cool. And the other thing I wanted to say about that, Vann, is, yeah, man, I am definitely one of those people living in an apartment where I've tried like heck to get my apartment manager to get recycling in. And I agree, there's no word other than insane, because I grew up about a mile from here, and there's been curbside recycling pickup because it was a single family home for at least 30 years, if not longer. And then you move 1 mile away, I'm using less resources. I have a teeny tiny, my electric bill is like $14 a month. Like I'm being resource efficient, and then I don't have recycling. So I can definitely relate to that. So how does that work as far as the building manager having to be or I don't know if they have to be accommodating, but do you find that some people want to have pickup, but there's an issue with someone coming in to the building, or how?
Right. So we haven't had any issues with property managers yet. So that's been a great thing.
Okay, good.
Some of them have been slow to respond to emails regarding member drop-off locations. So because of the way we pick up the bucket every week, and it's, there's food waste inside. We want the collection and drop-off location to be, an ideal location. It shouldn't be outside directly in the sun all day long. And so this brings up another point, another feature about our business, which is that to make composting and our service more interesting and appealing, we also have a online Coco Store where our members can buy sustainable and local progressive products and have them shipped in their new clean bucket for free shipping. And so we want those products in the new clean bucket to be in a safe place, similar to wherever they get their packages. So ideally, this spot is in a mail room, or sometimes bigger buildings have storage closets that they set up for us. So those are kind of like the ideal locations. When we're working with a new member in a new big building, we tend to directly go to the property manager, tell them, hey, we have this member signing up, and they're almost always, they're pretty accommodating to this, because it's obviously good for the planet. It's they don't want to make their tenant unhappy by not being accommodating. We lay out all the benefits of our service and how we use these smell-proof locking lid bins that really make it a non-issue for smells, etc. So property management hasn't been an issue.
You can see a path for it to become business as usual. And as everything with the environment, that it should be a bonus. It should be seen as a bonus, because of course, if we're not doing it, there is a cost that's being incurred. It's just not being calculated. It's not being acknowledged when we do silly things like sending food to a landfill.
Compost Colorado is all about that idea of making environmentalism viral, or making environmentalism more appealing and more inclusive. I think that by combining the service of distributing local progressive products into the bins.
Okay, so I want to interrupt you and just go back a second, because you mentioned something about things coming in the buckets, in the new bucket. So not only is it a clean bucket, but it's like a goodie bucket, or what the heck is in those buckets?
So basically what we do is that we use the new clean bucket as a reusable delivery vessel, if you will. So unlike delivery services who are packaging everything in cardboard, that of course uses a lot of water, a lot of resources to make, even if it is recycled cardboard. These reusable buckets are just a really great and obviously sturdy container to transport products. And so we work with other local progressive brands on distributing sample products to our members to expose our eco-minded folks to really cool products. So Boulder Granola donated a whole bunch of granola to our members recently, so that was really cool. We recently partnered with Namaste Solar, so all our Coco members got a voucher on their bucket that said, that they all get $250 off solar installations. And so we're really trying to find a way to use this bucket, as not just a thing for collecting your compost, but also as a means of learning and being exposed to other local progressive businesses and causes in the community.
That's incredible. That's got so many pluses to it, because I think a lot of people end up ordering things from Amazon or whatever, honestly, out of a little bit of boredom, or I don't know, they want just some kind of zing in their life. And it's what, in a different age, it would be, you'd be a shopaholic by going to a mall. And I think people do want some surprise, and some, who doesn't want a surprise showing up at your door? So
I agree. I think there's definitely some, and I think Amazon is reinforcing the psychology of having something delivered to your house all the time, and people are are almost expecting that zing, as you called it, this little surprise, this little toy to come every week, whether it's like some cheap sunglasses or whether it's some new electronic toy. They're ordering all this junk from Amazon, and we're trying to sort of use that or deconstruct that consumerist behavior and turn it into something that's good. And they're maybe not getting something that's they're getting like a sustainable toy, or like they're getting a cool zine that introduces them to some incredible artists in their community, or they're getting some awesome pickles from like the Real Deal Pickles. You can buy, you know, some like really great artisan products from our store as well. So I think it's just a great way for folks to really start shopping local, which of course is great for the economy, but is also great for the environment, because when you're shopping local, there's less inputs and stuff coming from shipping all across the country and more stuff coming locally. And so there's a lot of environmental benefits to shopping local and to buying stuff from the Coco Store.
So Vann, you're saying so that people will get a sample of these different things, and then if they want to purchase some of those, that they can order those, and then
Yes,
they get delivered in future weeks.
Yes, so we have both. We provide sample products for free, often in the buckets. And then in addition to the samples and perks that come in your bucket, we have the Coco Store. So, and that's where we have like a larger catalog of products that folks can buy. So maybe at first they'll get like a little tea sample from Rose House Gifts, and then they'll be like, cool, like, you know, and they'll learn that Rose House Gifts off Broadway, they compost, and they run all their energy off wind turbines, which is really great. And they'll be like, wow, that's awesome. And then we'll have their tea in our Coco Store for these for folks to buy and source later. If they live in Inglewood or Edgewater, and maybe they don't live near the Rose House Gifts, but they want to support their mission, we're sort of providing them a platform for this local business to sort of distribute their goods in a sustainable, cost-effective way.
Yeah, and I love that. Yeah, that you're double booking that trip. I mean, that trip is already going to happen to pick it up, bring the bucket, and so this is what nature does. You know, nature does all these brilliant things. Nature is so efficient and so effective, and I feel like you're modeling that in everything that you're doing. Okay, Vann, so you just mentioned businesses a moment ago. So tell us a little bit about what kind of businesses are good for you, like, you know, would be good for a composting pickup, and how that all works.
We collect from a myriad of different kinds of businesses, from coffee shops, small restaurants, office spaces, events. Like I mentioned earlier, we're trying to, you know, fit in wherever there is waste and the city doesn't collect. So there's so many different kinds of environments. There's, you know, breweries, there's coffee shops, plant stores. We try to create a customized plan for each of these commercial clients so that it best integrates in, and composting becomes something that isn't like seen as an extra thing they have to do, but is actually easier. So the way we do that, for example, with coffee shops, I was collecting today from Mutiny Cafe and Spur Coffee and Amethyst, for example. So we do a similar bucket swap with these commercial clients. So, which is another really important, I think we can talk about this in a little bit, about not using bags for collecting compost and not using bags in general for trash and recycling. But we're very bagless. We're part of the bagless philosophy here at Compost Colorado. So we pick up those buckets of coffee grounds. They're very heavy. And then we swap them out with clean buckets. So the staff at these coffee shops, they never have to take out these heavy trash bags full of coffee grounds that end up ripping and spilling all over themselves. And then they love it because there's something less for them to have to do. And then we come like twice a week and swap them out and That's sort of how we work and fit in with coffee shops and small restaurants that have more waste. And then with plant stores and office spaces, we also provide these buckets and collect maybe once or twice a week, depending on their volume, and discuss like placement of the buckets and education and everything like that to sort of make this new initiative become really easy for everyone involved. So we really are cognizant of training, of education, and just trying to make it so people view it as something that's good and not something that's like extra they have to do.
So then how about signage? Because I think that that might be an area of concern, especially like a lot of people aren't sure exactly what to compost themselves, and if they have to talk to customers or something. How do you deal with that?
Within the trash recycling compost tri-bin realm, there's a lot of confusion about what goes in which bin. All the time, people are confused. There's misinformation out there about what's compostable, what's recyclable. And so to solve that issue, on each of the buckets, we actually have a list of what you can and what you cannot throw in. So we try to make it so it's like, I mean, they're going to use this bucket regardless, and so they can easily always come back to this and know what can and cannot be included. And so, for example, we let people, compost all their produce, any of their leftovers. We accept meat, bones, because we work with an industrial compost facility for processing, and then paper towels, plants, compostable cups, etc. And then we include a list of stuff that can't be composted. So plastics and styrofoam, obviously, and metal and cork. And I think what people find is that 50% approximately of things you would be throwing in the trash are actually compostable. And this is a common thing they find in most landfills, is that half of what's in the landfill is actually compostable. And so we really try to make it clear on the buckets and through education what people can and cannot throw in.
Do you find, though, that in something like a coffee shop where they might have some like customer-facing collection areas, do they need a little extra signage or something like that?
Most of the commercial places I collect from, we do not have front of house waste receptacles for compost. And this is, while this may not be like the most like greenwashing thing that the business can do, because having composting at the front of the house is like a really good look. We're a progressive coffee shop, we compost. It's actually like way less important than the back of house, the actual people that are making the compost or, making the coffee. It's way less important than those employees composting, because almost all the waste back there is compostable. Honestly, each place that is going to have front of house composting or recycling, they need to have a customized list, infographic of what they could possibly include in those, because each place is different. Each place is going to have different wax paper. It's going to have different kinds of silverware, and no restaurant is the same. And so, you can go to a Legal Pete's and almost everything they have is compostable, right? They only have compost and recycling bins front of house to make it easier. But at another place, there's going to be 3 bins, and they're going to be like, well, I was composting these at Illegal Pete's. Can I compost these here? And so what Illegal Pete's does, and what really needs to be done everywhere there's a tri-bin system for consumers, is having a really descriptive infographic with the pictures of what can and cannot be compostable for that location.
We want a simple answer, and like everybody wants it to be the same everywhere. But what you're saying is, that's kind of optimistic thinking. That's kind of naive. And so just go ahead and take that extra effort and figure out all the all the products that you have and where they need to go, and make it very explicit and an infographic rather than even just a list if it is front of house, so that people can just see it and identify it and drop it in there. Yeah.
I think Illegal Pete's system of having just they've done a really great job of having just composting and recycling front of house, and by having I know it may not seem like it would make a big difference, but by having 2 options instead of 3, it really makes it a lot easier psychologically for people, because if they're having to look at all 3 options and some things it just makes it a lot more difficult. So hopefully we'll be seeing more of those systems put in place, front of house, direct customer facing places. But
based on what you're just saying, I bet that having 3 bins, it's probably exponentially more decisions than having 2 bins. Yeah, just knowing that the restaurant itself has decided we're not using anything that needs to go to landfill. So if you brought something in that needs to go to landfill, well, then that's your business. But from our perspective, that it would be completely 100% waste diversion. That is so cool. So Vann, one of the things I wanted to ask you real quick, and I know you mentioned it kind of briefly, but is thinking about composting as a climate action.
Yes, I'm really glad you asked this question. I think so many people do not realize that composting, the impact of composting, the impact it has on our atmosphere and greenhouse gas emissions. So when organic material such as food waste, leaf mulch, etc., ends up at a landfill, it gets trapped in styrofoam and plastic and other inert materials, and it breaks down anaerobically really slowly. So without oxygen, it's trapped, and it can take decades and hundreds of years even for some watermelon rind to finally decompose when it's trapped. And so when it's releasing, what it ends up releasing in that process is methane gas, which is 22 times more potent in terms of heat capacity than carbon dioxide. And so what they're finding is that nearly 20% of our greenhouse gas emissions in America comes from our landfills. And so it's not the styrofoam that's releasing. Styrofoam, when it goes to a landfill, it does not release greenhouse gas emissions because it's inert. It's not organic. But all this other stuff is what's releasing that. So half of what goes to a landfill, like I mentioned earlier, is compostable. So if we diverted half, we would, one, save space in the landfill for those few things that are not compostable or recyclable and save money there. But we would also completely mitigate those greenhouse gas emissions that are really harming the atmosphere. And there's a lot of different ways to reduce your carbon footprint, to become a composting, and I say this all the time, it's the easiest and most effective way for you to make a difference for climate change. You are, instead of giving up meat entirely or giving up driving entirely, which are pretty radical lifestyle shifts, this shift is only as simple as this is just you throwing the banana peel in a third bin. It's really easy. And like I said, we try to make it even easier. We're cleaning your bucket every week. We're providing you perks and samples in your new bin. So we're really trying to make this this process even easier for people, because climate change is a really terrible issue, and this is one of the most important components of combating climate change, in my opinion, and the EPA's opinion as well. So I really think that the attention climate change and greenhouse gas emissions are getting is helping drive the zero waste and composting movement. And I'm glad that people are starting to become more aware.
All right. So then now we come to the big question, Vann, how much? So that, maybe a lot of people would go for composting if they knew that it was something that was affordable. I think a lot of people don't even know that it's an option, but they might actually just assume that it's out of their price range. So can we talk a little bit about the costs and what that price is for people to have this kind of service?
One of the factors in me wanting to start this business is that I personally could not afford a compost collection service in Denver when I was living in an apartment about a year ago. The options that were available were about $30 a month for a 1-gallon container of food waste every week. And to me, that was not something I was able to afford at the time. And so that really got us thinking about how we could make Compost Colorado a more affordable service for everyone. And which is why we've developed this innovative approach for bringing in other forms of revenue other than just the membership fee. So our membership fees start at $16.99, and that is our middle rate that most people choose is $21.99. That's our ecological grub staker plan. And then our gold plan, or we call it our Coco leadership level, is $34.99. And that gets you a lot more. That's for folks who are a little bit more gung-ho and are interested in getting some of the other features that we offer. So they get invited to our Coco conference, semi-annual Coco conference, and they get more samples in their buckets, etc. So we have a few different pricing plans so that it's people have the option to make it more affordable for their needs. And longer term, it would be really a beautiful world if we could really get the Coco Store to accommodate more of our revenue stream, and then hopefully offer the compost collection service as just complimentary. So that's something we're looking to do in the future. So definitely trying to keep composting and affordable and inclusive to everybody.
So that would be cool if Amazon, I was thinking about that, like for all the Amazon deliveries, like they should have free pickup of all the stuff that they deliver, like all the packaging and all that stuff. They should be taking it back with them. So this is kind of a better version of that, where you're providing them products and then you're also doing the compost pickup. But yeah, I mean, I like what you're talking about, because it is more of a loop, and using every single part of that process to be something useful rather than just wasteful. So that's so cool. Well, I just really want to thank you, Vann, for hanging out with us today and inspiring people to compost. I mean, it's one of those things, I didn't grow up composting. I didn't grow up around gardens or anything. And once I started composting, I have such a love affair with rotting food now that it just breaks my heart to do anything other than compost something like a banana peel. And I really appreciate you being out there and educating people to the beauty of this natural system that we could, as you were saying earlier, instead of, that we could be supporting it rather than fighting against it. So is there any last thing that we didn't cover before we sign off here?
Well, I do want to say that one of the things that's really helping Coco and I think Colorado in general is this Denver Compost Challenge that is going on right now. So there's a great team of green, a green team that is really spearheading this. Tara and Jasmine of EcoCycle are two of my colleagues, and they are really help getting the word out about composting. And so I want to say that if folks want to feel a sense of competition, maybe get a little bit, maybe that'll inspire them to compost. There's going to be metrics on different neighborhoods and how much, each neighborhood or each city council member, their district composts. And so it'll be, Coco's, really happy to be working with the Compost Challenge and getting the word out there about the benefits of composting. And I'm just really thankful for them for spearheading this and really marketing composting and the importance of it.
I can't believe I forgot to mention that because that Denver Compost Challenge that was really started as an idea with Tara in one of our Green Team Accelerator Lab meetings. And so I'm mentoring 20 teams across Metro Denver, and our partners are Denver Sustainable Neighborhoods and EcoCycle. And so some of the teams are Congress Park. So that's Tara, that's where Tara Toll is connected. And so it was really her idea. And she started asking people in this accelerator lab, anybody else interested in this? And people are saying, yeah, that's a great idea. So I'm so glad that you reminded me about that. And I'll include in the show notes the link to the Denver Compost Challenge website. There are resources at the Denver Recycles as well as on Denver Sustainable Neighborhoods that have all kinds of graphics and educational things that you can print out and hand out. And on the Sustainable Neighborhoods, it's ideas for things that you can do, whether it's tabling at an event. One of the neighborhoods they pushed compost, recycling, and trash bins in the 4th of July parade. And then they did a zero waste effort there and talked to people about composting. So yeah, there are so many great resources there. And I can't believe I completely forgot to mention that. So thank you so much for bringing that up. All right, so with that, I'm going to sign off here and remind everybody that the time for action is now because there is no planet B. Thank you so much, Vann.
Thank you so much, Joan.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that's it for another episode of the Green Team Academy podcast. Remember to check out all the resources to help you make a positive eco impact in your community at greenteamacademy.com. Thanks so much and see you right back here soon.